Hi there. I just wanted to go through the Weimar Constitution with you just to make sure you all understand it okay. So I'm just going to go through this here very briefly, and you can use this as a point of reference as well, okay? So this is going to look at Weimar Germany, the strengths and weaknesses of the Constitution, and the features of the Constitution as well too, and it should help out if you're little essay, the 10 marker that you've got as well too. Okay, so we're going to work out how it worked and its strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so you'll have see here we have covered these sections here, and we're now on to this one here. So we've got key constitutional weaknesses and the strengths and weaknesses of the Constitution itself. Alright, so the Constitution then, okay, so in 1919 the German politicians, they actually met in Weimar, and they were set out to actually design a new constitution. And Weimar, they met there instead of Berlin because there was so much unrest going on in Berlin following the loss of World War One. And this is Weimar here, and they set about trying to create a new constitution for this new democracy they're gonna create. And that constitution is basically a set of rules on how the country is going to be run. Okay, and these are the two people here. So President Ebert's this guy here. Okay, this is Hugo Preuss, and he's put in charge of designing this constitution. So Ebert invited them to draft the new constitution. It took 6 months to put together, and it was actually passed by the Reichstag right after the Treaty of Versailles, so quite a difficult time, in July 1919. Okay, and it was passed by 262 votes to 75 at the time. Just remember though, Germany was used to strong autocratic rule since 1871 when the state was formed. Democracy to them is actually something quite new, so it is very different. Okay, and yes, this is who they had before. So the Kaiser would be like an emperor or a king, and he basically had almost supreme power at the time as well. So they're not used to like a meaningful democracy. Okay, good. So how did the Weimar Constitution actually work then? Okay, so Germany was to retain the title of Reich. Reich means empire. It's an old title, but it does show an element of nationalistic pride in the Germany that has just lost the war. Okay, so it's just an element of that nationalism that's still there, still a lot of pride in the country. It's also declared democratic. This showed its intention to base its future on democracy. Okay, free choice, be able to choose elections and who able to choose in elections which government was going to represent them. It was also a republic, so that means the Kaiser was booted out. He had to abdicate, and he went and left and lived in nearby Holland for the next until 1940, whenever he passed away. Okay, so Germany would now have an elected president as head of state, not a king, not a monarch. Okay, so they get rid of the monarchy. Germany's also made a federal state. If you think about it, all these different states in Germany, they all have very different cultures and sometimes beliefs as well too. So there's lots of different states in Germany. There's 17 Länder or states, and they all have various different things about them. So the best thing that they thought they could do was create a federal state. Federal state means that all the states have their own parliaments, which means they can make their own laws and they can follow their own customs, but there's still this major federal central government in Berlin. Okay, and it makes a lot of the laws for the country, including like taxes and foreign affairs, things like that. Okay, so this is actually quite important. So you've got Bavaria down here, Prussia over here, Brandenburg, all these different states. They all have lots of power, but it's always the central power always lies with Berlin and the Reichstag. Okay, good. So the next one is that it was a republic. So a republic always has a president in charge, and in this case, they voted in a president every 7 years. The president was deliberately given a lot of like strong powers. So they were the commander-in-chief, supreme commander of the armed forces. They had the power to dissolve the Reichstag. So if the Reichstag's not working, they've got the power to dissolve that and potentially call an election. They could also appoint the chancellor, and this here was kind of always based on who had the strongest party most of the time anyway, but it does have that power to appoint the chancellor, like the prime minister. This very powerful position, as I said earlier on, they wanted to make it powerful deliberately because they were given the power to run the country in emergency, so they could suspend democracy using, and it's very important you know this, Article 48, and through Article 48 they can rule by decree. That's with a C, not a G, so they can rule by decree. It's an emergency powers that they can rule without the support of the Reichstag if there is a crisis. And as you guys all know, what constitutes a crisis can be quite different. Okay, however, the Reichstag could potentially, like, I suppose, go against this. Okay, Right, okay, so that is a lot of powers vested in one person there. The Chancellor would be like the Prime Minister, okay? They are actually chosen by the President, but they're usually chosen from the party of the most votes at election time, and they're kind of the one in charge of running the country, okay? They also must have the support of at least half of the Reichstag, half of the Parliament to make laws, and this made this quite difficult to get, so it made governing quite difficult. Okay? It was also a democracy. It's very, very important you know this. So it's a democracy, okay? So German people could vote for members of their parliament, the Reichstag. This would make laws. Members voted in every 4 years. It used a system called PR, proportional representation, and this system means the number of politicians each party has is based on their votes. So 10% of the vote should equal 10% of seats. So PR, highly representative system, okay? It allows many more parties the chance to run and the chance to be elected. So even if you have like even if you're a small party, you do have the potential to get elected in a certain area. It takes 60,000 votes in an electoral district to get one seat in the Reichstag. However, it can also lead to too many parties. This may include extremist parties like communists or nationalists. It could also create so many parties that no one party could ever have a majority. This encourages coalition governments, where a government is only formed by making deals with other parties. Alright. There is also a Reichsrat, just in case. A Reichsrat would be the second house in the German system. And the Reichsrat basically represents the regions, and it has the power sometimes to make the politicians go and think about a law again. Okay. However, the Reichstag, because it's elected, has the most powers. Okay, so it had a great deal of freedoms as well too. So German people were some of the most free in the world. Their new constitution really did give them that power to be the most free in the world. All German men and, very importantly, women could actually vote at the age of 20, and they can elect the president and politicians in the Reichstag. The new constitution guarantees them basic freedoms as well too. So they have a Bill of Rights guarantees them freedom of speech, religion, protest, freedom of assembly to all meet up as well too and protest, and censorship is banned in Weimar Germany as well too, which is quite a forward-thinking step. Right, so this system has a lot of positives, but it also has a lot of weaknesses, and sometimes within the same thing you can get both. So let's have a look at this. First of all, the federal state then. So the federal state, Germany is only unified in 1871, so this system does give each state the power to maintain that independence and that culture as well too. However, if the country, if a state is taken over by an extremist group, it could be a communist group, for example, or a nationalist group, well, what they could do is basically break away from Germany. They could break their state away from Germany, or they could attempt to seize power in Berlin as well too. So there is that potential for trouble. Republic, so it has lots of positives too. So Germany's used to having a strong leader, so a strong president suited what they had before in the past. Okay, and this was especially good because they faced a lot of trouble following the loss of the First World War, so they needed to have a strong president. Give the president enough powers to control the country in an emergency using the decree powers. Okay, it also allowed them to steer the coalition governments, so a president can actually work out which parties should actually work together. The negatives of this, so Article 48 powers could, as you know, be potentially misused to give the president the power to suspend democracy, which could then be regarded as potentially autocratic. It also gives them powers to help choose chancellors and governments, and again that could be misused as well too. Okay, so the factors of democracy, well, Germans were actually free to choose their own presidents and their own government. They initially really did support this as well, 80% turnout in the first election, so it shows that a lot of people want to vote, okay, and 75% of those parties were supporting pro-Weimar, pro-democracy parties, so certainly they had support. Elections were much more proportional and allowed for much greater choice at elections, and coalition governments could be more representative, some people might argue, and prevent the dominance of one party. The negatives here then, well, Germans had little experience of democracy before this. This is a new thing for them, and some really influential groups such as army generals, judiciary, civil service, they were all quite right-wing, and they were definitely opposed to democracy or reluctant to support it. PR produced too many parties, okay, so too much choice is sometimes worse, because it also allows extremist parties to actually potentially have a little bit of power, And if you, as you know, the coalition governments, well, you could get small parties becoming part of that. So yes, communists and nationalists were both represented. No one party dominated, so weak coalition governments were constantly formed, and they constantly collapsed as well due to lack of agreement. I mean, they have to deal with so many different problems that those coalitions with different parties in it just fell apart. And then finally, can you have too much freedom? Well, you know, it's argued that yes, Germany is the most liberal and free nation in the world, censorship forbidden, freedom's guaranteed, but this is at a time whenever Germany faces so much challenge, so much strife, and all parties could potentially air their views, no matter how distasteful they were, no matter how much they were opposed to the Weimar democracy. They've got freedom to do that. So the new democracy could be undermined very easily at this very early stage when it faced so much challenge. So your task was to do this 10 marker, analyse the main features of the Weimar Constitution. Just to go through this again, okay, so what you're looking for is about 4 paragraphs. You should start by addressing the questions. The Weimar Constitution of 1919 was created with a number of key features. That just links to the question. And then what you have to do is then break it into your building blocks. So choose the one that you can talk about most first. So I would probably suggest this. So the Republic, the fact there's a Republic. So firstly, the Constitution created a Republic, and then go on to add your evidence, your facts for this. So in 1918, the Kaiser was forced to abdicate, and an elected president was to be head of state. This president was to be elected for 7 years. This president had the power to decree the Article 48 powers. This president was supreme commander of the army. That's the sort of stuff you're putting into this. Give as much detail as possible for each paragraph. Okay. Then obviously you're going next. Perhaps you might want to choose it as democracy. Again, describe what's involved there, and you know, potentially have four good, well-argued paragraphs. If you do that there, you'll definitely get your marks. And this is how it's marked. Okay, so level 1, you can see here it's episodic, largely inaccurate. It's only a narrative form, it's basically telling stories, don't answer the question. Superficial understanding, lack of clarity, little specialist vocabulary, like Article 48 would be specialist vocabulary, so little use of those keywords. And then spag, spelling, punctuation, and grammar might be difficult. But at the very top, look, this answer here will consistently demonstrate, organise, and communicate knowledge, understanding relevantly, clearly, and concisely. The points are well developed and substantiated, sound explanation and analysis, and it provides a comprehensive analysis of the topic, including the majority of the key points outlined. Okay, it's highly clear what you're saying. It's accurate. There's specialist vocabulary in there, like PR, like Article 48, and your spelling, punctuation, and grammar would be top notch. And at that, there will take you to the top, straight to the top level, which is 8 to 10 marks. This is your first 10-mark question. Hopefully this helps. Remember to send me a wee message if you're stuck on anything, and just let me know, okay? But hopefully this helps. Thanks for everything this week. You've been very understanding being a new teacher, so I hope it all has made sense. Okay, take care. Thank you.